Good morning, everyone. Welcome to a Tuesday edition of Lectionary Thoughts. This is Pastor Howie, Fowler Baptist Church, and I'm here to share the scriptures with you today and some insights that we may find in these three passages for today's Lectionary Thoughts. We'll be looking again at Psalm 119. This time we're going to read both sections, so it'll be 113 through 128. So the other passages are quite short, unlike what they were yesterday. 1 Samuel 19, 1 through 7 continues the account of Saul and his double-mindedness and David's single-minded devotion, but also his fear of Saul. And Acts chapter 27, 39 through 44, just gives us a little bit more of a glimpse into the account of Paul's travels to Rome to be put on trial by Nero at his own request, because he had done nothing wrong according to Jewish law, and he would not appeal to go back to Jerusalem to be put on trial because he knew that wouldn't be very successful. And so, as a Roman citizen, he appealed to Caesar and was granted that request, even though King Agrippa would have let him go in the trial. So you remember all those things towards the end of Acts. And in this we see Paul's single-mindedness to go wherever God led him to go and to stand before kings and people in authority to testify the glory of Jesus Christ. So we begin with Psalm 119. And many of you in church who watch these videos, and those of you who are watching on YouTube, if you like these, hit like and subscribe, pass them on to your friends. But we'll tell you something about Psalm 119. I read through Psalm 119 every month, right up to the 22nd day of the month, because there are 22 sections in Psalm 119. As I said yesterday, it's designed, it was put together, constructed as an acrostic poem, actually a prayer, and there are 8 sections, each one headed by a Hebrew character in the Hebrew alphabet. And there are 22 characters in the Hebrew alphabet. So there are 22 sections, 8 verses each. And every month, beginning on the first day of the month and through to the 22nd day of the month, I read a section of Psalm 119 over and over and over again, 12 times a year. And I've been doing this for years, and it's not so much that I'm memorizing things and could recite them. I can't, I'm not good at that. But it is a valuable devotional tool. And someday I may do something in more detail with Psalm 119. We did go through it in church, and we went through the book of Psalms in church, and for 22 weeks I introduced whatever psalm it was by reading one of those sections from Psalm 119. So I would just recommend this to anybody. Use Psalm 119 as a start to your day. Not the whole psalm, just 8 verses. Or even just one verse at a time. I've discovered that if you read one verse of Psalm 119 a day as kind of a theme verse for your day, it will take you through the 26th day of June, so over half a year. And then you could start it over again if you wanted to. It's a really great psalm. So anyway, here is the section today, verses 1 through 13 through verse 128. I hate double-minded people, but I love your law. You are my refuge and my shield. I have put my hope in your word. Away from me, you evildoers, that I may keep the commands of God. Sustain me, my God, according to your promise, and I will live. Do not let my hopes be dashed. Uphold me, and I will be delivered. I will always have regard for your decrees. You reject all who stray from your decrees, for their delusions come to nothing. All the wicked of the earth you discard like dross. Dross is that stuff that bubbles up when silver or gold, the impurities bubble up when silver or gold or other metals are being melted and purified. So you reject all who stray from your decrees. Their delusions come to nothing. All the wicked of the earth you discard like dross. Therefore I love your statutes. My flesh trembles in fear of you. I stand in awe of your laws. And now the next section. I have done what is righteous and just. Do not leave me to my oppressors. And see, this is what is David's heart. And if he's the author of this, then it's coming out. This is David's heart. Even in the face of Saul's murderous attempts on his life, David was loyal to the king because God had anointed Saul, and God had not yet removed Saul from the throne. So David was single-minded, and he was righteous in his respect and honor of the king. I've done what is righteous and just. Do not leave me to my oppressors. Ensure your servant's well-being. Do not let the arrogant oppress me. My eyes fail, looking for your salvation, looking for your righteous promise. Deal with your servant according to your love, and teach me your decrees. I am your servant. Give me discernment, that I may understand your statutes. And we need to pray that all the time. We need to pray for God's gift of discernment, the Spirit's gift of discernment to us, so that as we read the Scriptures, we may get insight from them. And not just our own insight, but, spiritual insight from God Himself. It is time for you to act, Lord. Your law is being broken. And that's a verse for today, because we see all around us how far our culture has departed from the one true God and His statutes and His laws and His decrees. Because I love your commands more than gold, more than pure gold, and because I consider all your precepts right, I hate every wrong path. And that idea of hatred is we discern that it's wrong and it's not to be a part of our lives. So that's Psalm 119, 2 sections. One section called in Hebrew, and I probably don't pronounce it right, Samik, the other called Ayin. But we come now to 1 Samuel chapter 19, and only 7 verses 1 through 7. And again, it is in the place where Saul is vacillating between wanting David and liking David and appreciating David's ministry to him, and hating David and being afraid of David and wanting to kill him. And so in this section, new chapter, we find Jonathan interceding on David's behalf. Saul told his son Jonathan and all the attendants to kill David. But Jonathan had taken a great liking to David and warned him, "My father Saul is looking for a chance to kill you. Be on your guard tomorrow morning. Go into hiding and stay there. I will go out and stand with my father in the field where you are. I'll speak to him about you and will tell you what I find out." Jonathan spoke well of David to Saul his father and said to him, "Let not the king do wrong to his servant David. He has not wronged you, and what he has done has benefited you greatly. He took his life in his hands when he killed the Philistine," referring to Goliath. "The Lord won a great victory for all Israel, and you saw it and were glad. Why then would you do wrong to an innocent man like David by killing him for no reason?" Saul listened to Jonathan and took this oath, "As surely as the Lord lives, David will not be put to death." So So we see the vacillating, changing mind of Saul and his very disrupted condition because God had rejected him. And God had removed his hand from blessing Saul. So Jonathan called David and told him the whole conversation. He brought him to Saul, and David was with Saul as before. It's not going to stay that way. As we continue to look at this section of David's history, we'll find out that Saul continually tries to kill him until David finally flees and ultimately becomes the king of Israel. So that's Saul. And I think it is an interesting contrast the way this is set up, that Saul, the son of Kish, the first of Israel's kings, who was distracted by the world and by his own passions and lost the kingdom, is contrasted with Saul of Tarsus, who was the great persecutor of the church in the beginning of Acts, and at the end of Acts is single-mindedly going to testify to the king of the Roman Empire about the gospel of Jesus Christ. And that is Saul, whose name was changed to Paul, the apostle. And what we have here in Acts 27, 39 through 44 is another glimpse of the shipwreck, the storm at sea, the great danger that Paul and his companions and the Roman soldiers and the sailors found themselves in. And yet God had given Paul a vision we talked about yesterday. An angel was sent to him, and the angel said, "Don't worry, you will be okay. Is my intention that you stand before Caesar, and I have graciously given you all the men who are with you. Not only your fellow disciples, but the Roman soldiers and the sailors of this ship. None will be lost." So here we see the fulfillment of this promise. When daylight came, they did not recognize the land. Remember, they were approaching land, and they were a little bit afraid that they might run aground. Well, now they're seeing the land they're approaching. So they didn't recognize the land, but they saw a bay with a sandy beach, where they decided to run the ship aground if they could. Cutting loose the anchors, they left them in the sea, and at the same time untied the ropes that held the rudders. Then they hoisted the foresail to the wind and made for the beach. But the ship struck a sandbar and ran aground. The bow stuck fast and would not move, and the stern was broken to pieces by the pounding of the surf. The storm's still going on. The soldiers planned to kill the prisoners to prevent any of them from swimming away and escaping. It was actually their fear of their own execution, because Roman law was, if a soldier was given guard duty over a prisoner and the prisoner escaped, then the soldier was executed. But the centurion wanted to spare Paul's life and kept them from carrying out their plan. He ordered those who could swim to jump overboard first and get to land. The rest were to get there on planks or on other pieces of the ship. In this way, everyone reached land safely. God's word fulfilled, God's promise fulfilled. These men, most of them pagans most likely, saved because of God's favor to Paul and his friends. So, as we go through the storms of life, as we see this culture in which we live, the world's culture, turning further and further away from God, may we, like the psalmist, pray for discernment. May we, like the psalmist, be ever more dedicated to the law of God, the word of God, the gospel of Jesus Christ. When we see rulers vacillating from one side to another, or perhaps we see rulers falling into very self-centered mental illness, that's what happened with Saul. We must stand firm. on the truth of God and our representation of Jesus Christ in this world. And no matter what storms are thrown at us, whether it's from just circumstances, the elements, and we're seeing a lot of things happening even in the United States, drought in the far west, forest fires again beginning to start up, severe thunderstorms, tornadoes, tropical storms, economic storms, political strife, division in our country. Our country is even divided over whether or not to get the vaccine to protect us from coronavirus. When we see all this turmoil, let us be single-minded like the Apostle Paul. For our testimony is what Christ has left us in this world to carry. Our testimony to rulers, our testimony to our neighbors, our testimony that Jesus Christ is Lord, to the glory of God the Father. Anyway, that's it for today. We'll see you tomorrow. God bless your day.